the technology that's available to organizations is going to help them put that information out there so customers can find it on social media, on these platforms, and use that information to go through that buying process. So organizations really have to be kind of how I described in the book, in the conditions and using these new platforms, using social media to tell their stories.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interview. Hi and welcome to the My Future Business Show. My name's Rick Nusky. I'm the host of the show, and today's topic is about a book. It's called Ride the Wave, and this is a book about embracing change and creating a powerful new relationship with risks. Now, as a former corporate manager who has a risk and compliance background, I have a personal interest in this topic, and my guest today, John Wessinger, is also a specialist in this area. He's released this book, and we're going to explore risk and all of its ins and outs along the way. How are you today, John?
I'm great, Rick. Thanks for having me on your show.
No, not a problem at all. It's a real pleasure to have you here, especially with somebody who has your background. You've created this book. How did this all come about for you?
Yeah, so I was actually doing a workshop that was titled Ride the Wave, and I was using the workshop as a way to kind of have it be my first introduction to potential customers and clients. And instead of walking into an organization and doing kind of a formal presentation about my products and services, I thought I would do more of a workshop format and talk about some of the challenges that I felt were out there within the sales and marketing areas within business, and then use that as a way to uncover some of the challenges that organizations were having within sales and marketing. And so the workshop kind of looked at two different stories that I used throughout the workshop to talk about what happened to me in business and kind of my journey starting my business and some of the challenges I faced. And I used a personal experience where I tried ocean surfing for the first time and almost drowned. And I used some of the examples that I discovered from surfing and how I applied those concepts and ideas to business, and how surfing and the ideas and concepts within surfing helped me kind of overcome some of the challenges that I was having within business. And a lot of those had to deal with change and my mindset and risk. And so the book really started as the workshop. And what I found was that when I was talking with potential clients and customers, it wasn't really kind of the technology around sales and marketing. There weren't really concerns around some of the new platforms like marketing automation or CRM and social media. The biggest challenge that organizations were having were just really changing, doing something new, and this fear of risk and trying something and either spending money and having it not work out, or having some sort of personal risk happen as a result. Like, I went out and tried this within the organization, it didn't work. Now potentially I'm going to lose my job for making this mistake. So after working with the workshop for a while, I had someone else who's an author recommend that I turn it into a book as kind of a companion piece to the workshop, and that's kind of how it got started.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. In our daily lives, every moment that we're above ground, we are dealing with risk on a perpetual basis, aren't we? Every day we're dealing with risks of driving, or risks of whatever, overexposure to the sun, or whatever it might be. Risk is everywhere. But from a fundamental level, given that My Future Business focuses on up-and-coming entrepreneurs and existing business owners, oftentimes they don't really understand what the word risk really means from a business perspective. Can you give us a bit of background on the idea of risk?
Yeah, so my background as well, I was in healthcare for about 10 years, and we had a lot of risk involved with launching new products, and we had a lot of risk involved with how we went about selling and marketing products and services to potential customers. And so we had compliance as well, and we had risk management, and we would talk about things that you couldn't do, in the field and things that you had to be careful of. And so I have risk kind of ingrained in me, much like you probably have from my background. So when I kind of first went out as a business owner and started my business, I spent a lot of time planning and kind of thinking about what's the worst case scenario? Like, what are the things that could potentially happen to me if I go out and start this new business? And initially, I think a lot of my concerns, and I think a lot of the people that start a business maybe for the first time don't think about the financial risks or actually how much money it's going to cost to not only pay your bills, but also run and manage your business. So you have a set of finances that you use to run your household, but then you have a whole new set of business expenses that you don't have as somebody who's working inside an organization in more of a corporate environment. So that was like the first thing that I learned right away. It's like, okay, I have to pay to run my website. I have to pay for MailChimp. If I want to have a logo, I have to pay for it. If I want to do something different with my website, I have to pay for it. So there's all these new financial risks that come into play as a new business owner. And so I would have to constantly weigh, if I invest this money, what's going to be my return? I don't have a lot of money. I'm not like a big corporation. So every dollar I spend has to have some kind of return on the investment. And so for me, initially, the big risk was this financial risk and figuring out how am I going to pay for things, but then how am I going to spend my money in an intelligent way to kind of lower some of those risks and grow my business, because you really need to make money to reinvest back in your business to grow it. And sometimes that's the biggest challenge or the biggest hurdle is kind of getting that cash flow going and getting yourself into a place where you can use money that you're building from the business to reinvest and continue to grow. So I would say for me, the first right out of the gate was kind of the financial risk. But then there's also this other side of it where it was this personal risk where everyone knows me as John, the guy who used to work at this one place, and then he worked here for a while. Now he's doing this new thing, and there's this risk involved with kind of putting yourself out there and exposing your new business to the world. And I think that was something that I had to get over as well and kind of think about, am I okay with, looking foolish sometimes because I'm new at being a business owner? And am I willing to go through that process of risking kind of that personal risk in order to get what I want? And so that was the other thing that I really had to think about up front and kind of work through. And they're both challenging. They're really different. The second one is more of a mental hurdle that you got to get over. So I would say that those are two things that I never thought about when I kind of initially started my business that came up as kind of challenges or things that were risky once I got started.
Yeah, I thank you again for sharing that. I wonder, for new business owners who are just starting out on their own journey, do they have to have entwined within the fabric of their entire business the idea of risk, and how would you help them to work that out if they were working with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, from the workshop and kind of the lessons from the book and what I kind of practice now as a result of going through this process is I try to figure out ways to lower the risk as much as possible. So an example in the book that I use is how surfers, when they try to surf a bigger wave or they try to surf and do a new trick, anytime they're kind of raising the bar and progressing their surf skills, they always train for that moment, whether it's a big wave and potentially being held down underwater and you have to hold your breath for a long time, or having the ability to swim away from a risky situation. They're always planning and training for those moments. So they don't just kind of go out on a whim and go surf like at Bell's Beach or Mavericks or one of these huge places where the waves are really big. They do a lot of on-the-ground land training in order to prepare themselves for those moments. So I try to do the same thing where I go through the process of what it would be like to roll something out new for the first time and prototype or test or kind of do my first iteration of what that would look like and almost do like a test pilot of it to see how it works, to learn from it, and then build from there. So I tend to not go all in on the first thing and just say, I'm going to spend a lot of my time on social media because I think that's going to be the best way to grow my business. I test it and see what works and learn from that, and then build on the things that become strengths for me and figure out what people are responding to and kind of spend more time there versus really trying to go all in and potentially setting up kind of an all or nothing scenario for myself, which I think when that happens, then we tend to have these moments where it's like, wow, I went all in, I failed, this was risky for me to do this. Now I'm less likely to go out and do something the next time. So I try to, as much as possible, just kind of, I don't want to say baby step in, but definitely create a process for myself where I'm slowly building up to something that might be a little bit more risky or a little bit bigger.
I listen to this and I have this in the back of my mind. I hear a couple of things. I hear, how do you deal with risk profiles? Because essentially when you're looking at a business, very much in the same way as you'd use surfing as a bit of a case scenario of how risk could be identified, when you profile an activity or a business and its set of processes, do you talk about that in the book? And if you do you quantify in any way risks throughout a business?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, from a sales and marketing standpoint, I really talk about the risks of investing in new skills and kind of going through that change management process. A lot of times organizations will invest a lot of money into something that's new for the organization, whether it be developing a new set of skills within the organization, within the people, or investing money into a new type of technology or platform, but not creating the right kind of context or the right environment for that change to happen. And so trying to figure out if I'm going to make a recommendation to a customer or a client about doing something new with their business, I really have to have a good understanding of what is this business leader, what are they like? Are they going to do this? Are they going to stick it out and go through this process completely? And are they capable of kind of building other people into this change and this new decision? Because the last thing I want to do is recommend something and have it fail. So yes, I have to profile almost people and organizations to figure out, who's going to be kind of the change agent within this organization to get this new process going. So, so I think for me, maybe it's a combination of both. It's kind of understanding the organization. Are they going to be willing to do something new? And then kind of identifying some people that are going to help execute and get that new process into place.
It's a fascinating topic, isn't it? The whole concept of risk and how it can impact a business. I would think anybody who is looking to improve the way that they identify, manage or mitigate risks in their business, that they reach out to John. John, where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. If you just search John Wessinger, I should pop up. I'm also on Facebook, and my handle is at Lateralus Solutions, and then also on Twitter at Plan Market Sell.
Right. Do you have a website?
Yep, and my website is lateralussolutions.com.
Fantastic. I just wanted to spin back around now. One of the things you've said in your bio about the types of sales and marketing skills that are going to be necessary to embrace this new technological era. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I would say some of the bigger changes within sales marketing are definitely social media, which I think everybody is aware of. That's probably the biggest and the first one. Within sales and marketing, there are new platforms that automate a lot of the sales and marketing processes that people have used traditionally that have been done by people. So there's a lot of automation with email. There's a lot of automation with CRM and sales where they're tracking activity and tracking information that's happening in the field. And so companies have to use that new technology to kind of adapt to what's happening with customers. And the biggest change that's happening with customers is that customers are now able to source more information, and they're able to almost circumvent the buying process that organizations have set up. So the example that I use in my book is when I bought a car for the first time, which is actually recent because I've had these sales jobs for years and I've gotten a company car. So I've never actually had to go to the lot and buy a car from somebody. So my process to buy my first car was I figured out what kind of car I want, which was a Fiat. And I did all my research. I went to their website. I price shopped. I looked at all the options for the car. And I put together a list of all the things that I wanted with this car. And I emailed someone at the dealership and I said, this is the car that I'm looking for. I'm wondering if you have this. And these are like the 3 options that I would be looking for in this Fiat. And so I emailed to somebody at like 9 a.m. that morning. I got a response back. That afternoon, they had transferred the car that I wanted to that lot, and I went there that afternoon and bought it. So I went through this buying process on my own. I didn't use a sales representative at the auto dealership, and I sourced my own information. I went through my own buying process, made a decision, and then I used the dealership as a concierge to basically close the deal and get the car that I wanted. So organizations need to realize that that's going to happen with every product and service that's out there. People are going to be able to source their own information, go through their own buying process, and are really going to look to an organization to kind of close out that last step and be a concierge for their product or service versus this thing where you're educating somebody step by step through the process of buying a car. So the technology that's available to organizations is going to help them put that information out there so customers can find it on social media, on these platforms, and use that information to go through that buying process. So organizations really have to be kind of how I described in the book, in the conditions and using these new platforms, using social media to tell their story so that people can go through that buying process because that's the way that everybody's doing it now.
That's an amazing take on the idea of using technology, because oftentimes we get overloaded with all of this this content, this information about certain topics. It's I guess about getting smart about condensing down and finding what you need when you need it. So John, where can people find your book?
Great question. So my book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's also at Itasca Books, and then I sell my book at discounted prices on my website at lateralussolutions.com/book, and I sell bulk orders there as well.
John, I could go deep onto this topic with you. It's one of those topics that's so vitally important that many people just simply overlook. They don't even necessarily understand it. So if you're listening to this call today, reach out to John. I'm sure he'd be more than willing to help you understand the concepts of risk and how to mitigate those risks in your business. John, thanks for being on the My Future Business show today. It's been a wonderful call.
Thanks for having me, Rick. I appreciate it.
It's been fun having you on the call with us today. Now click on that big red subscribe button and make sure you leave us a comment, share us with your friends, and join the growing list of leading entrepreneurs who have enjoyed their time on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews.